Alright, 6th graders, back again. Today we're going to be looking at dividing by decimals. By the end of this lesson, you want to be able to divide any number by a decimal. Let's look at a quick vocab review. A dividend is the number that is being divided. The divisor is the number we are dividing by, and the quotient is an answer to a division problem. Let's look at an example of what we were actually talking about. So taking a number and dividing it by a decimal. So how many groups of 3/10 are in 6/10? So essentially what we're doing is we're taking 6/10 and dividing it into groups of 3/10. If we use our example like we did before, first thing I'm going to do is color my example of 6/10. So now that I've colored my example of 6/10, I'm going to create groups of 3/10. So here would be 1, 2, 3/10. And then 1, 2, 3/10. So how many groups was I able to make? I was able to make 2. So 6/10 divided by 3/10 would give us an answer of 2. You might be asking, well, how does that work? So one of the tricks of when we're dividing by decimals is that we actually always want to divide by a whole number like we were doing before. And we're going to use a similar idea to equivalent fractions. So what we're going to do, I want us to find the quotient, and we can estimate to see if our answer is reasonable. So on our first problem, we're taking 4 and 32/100 and we're dividing it by 3 and 6/10. Now this one's a little bit tougher, but we might say that 4 and 32/100 is about 4, and 3 and 6/100 would also round to 4. So we should have an answer that's pretty close to 4 divided by 4, which would be 1. This is what it's actually going to look like though. Four and 32/100 divided by 3 and 6/10. Since I want to divide by a whole number, I'm going to multiply my divisor by 10 and actually make this into a 36. But if I do that, I have to also multiply my dividend by 10, which is just going to be moving my decimal place over one spot. What this turns into then is 43 and 2/10 divided by 36. And now we just proceed like we did before. 36 goes into 43 once. Bring down the 2. 36 goes into 72 twice, which should also be 72. So after we go all through all that, we get an answer of 0. So looking back, 4 and 32/100 divided by 3 and 6/10 gives us an actual answer of 1 and 2/10. Now what I'd like you to do is go ahead and pause the video and actually try the next 2 problems on your own and then check to see how you do. Once again, if we look, 12 and 95/100 would be about 13. 1 and 25/100 would be about 1. So our answer, if we divide those, should be around 13. So we have 12 and 95/100 dividing by 1 and 25/100. I'm going to create that whole number, so I need to move my decimal point over 2 spots. Need to do the same thing in my dividend. So now we're actually taking 1,295 and dividing it by 125. So 125 goes into 129 once. Does not go into 45. We're going to add in our decimal point. Actually, we wouldn't need that one. We're going to continue on. We're going to add a 0. 125 goes into 450. 3 times. We get 375. This is 15, then a 14. So it becomes a 10. 10 minus 5 is 5. 14 minus 7 is 7. We have 75. 125 doesn't go into 75. Well, sorry. We need to continue over, so we're going to add another 0. So we already brought down the 1. We bring down another 1. We have 750. 125 can go into 750. We'll say about 5 times 5 times 5. So for 125. That's alright. Sorry. So if we have 125 times 5, that'd be 12. Be 625. If I add another 125, and we'd have 750. So this can actually be a 6 here, which would give us 750. So our final answer is 10 and 36 hundredths. We're looking at the 12 and dividing it by 1 and 6 tenths. I'm going to move my decimal point over one spot. Remember, 12 is a whole number. The decimal point is at the end. So we need to move it over one spot. So this actually becomes 120. So the actual problem that we're going to be looking at is 120 divided by 16. 16 doesn't go into 0 or 12, but 16 goes into 20. Let's see. About 6 times 6 times 6 is 36. 9. So actually, let's try it 7 times. Two. So it'll be 112. So 120 minus 12 would be 8. Now we're going to add in our decimal point and a 0. 16 can go into 80. Let's see, about 5 times. 5 times 6 is 30. I have 80. So our final answer would be 7 and 5 tenths. Now let's just look at a couple word problem examples. So if you want, go ahead and pause the video, try these both out, and then check your work when you're done. So if I use 15 and 4500 gallons of gas to drive my car 370 and 8 tenths miles, how many miles per gallon did I get on my trip? Because I'm doing miles per gallon, that means I'm taking the number of miles and dividing it by the number of gallons. What I'm going to do is to jump ahead to give myself more space. Because I'm dividing by 15 and 45 hundredths, I know I'm going to have to move my decimal point over 2 spots. So same thing in my 370 and 8 tenths. Add in that 0. So I have 3,000, actually be 37,080 after I move my decimal point over 2 spots, divided by 1,400 or 1,545. You want to add in your decimal point at the end just to get that there, you can. Right, so 1,545 can go into 3,708. I'm going to estimate here, and I'm going to say twice. If you want to fill in your zeros, you can, just as placeholders. 2 times 5 is 10. 8 plus 1 is 9. 2 times 5 is 10. Will be 3,090. Go ahead and subtract 6, this becomes a 10, so we have 8, 1, 618. Then I'm going to drop down my 0. 1,545 goes into 6. 1,180. Let's see. I'm going to estimate and say 4 times. 4 times 5. I'm going to do it over here just to give myself more space since I'm running out of room. 20, 16. 4 times 4 is 16 plus 2 is 18. It's 20 plus 1. 4. Oh, look at that. 6,180. I'm going to subtract. I have nothing left over. So in this case, we actually didn't have a decimal. So our miles per gallon answer is 24. So we ended up with 24 miles per gallon. Members of the math club met at a restaurant for dinner. The total bill was $112.95 and they shared the bill equally. If each member paid $12.55, how many members are there in all in the math club? Once again, I'm going to move my decimal point over 2 spots because that's what I'm dividing by, which means I'm going to move this over 2 spots. So I'm taking 112.95, which the decimal point is now at the end because I moved it over 2 spots, and dividing it by 12.55. So 12.55 would have to go all the way into the 112.95. When we're looking at that, obviously, if you want to put in your zeros, in this case, we actually have to go all the way to the 5. So 12 can go into 11. It's a little bit less than 1. So I'm going to say 9 times. Just using some estimation here. Let's see, 45. 45 plus 4 would be 9. 9 times 2 is 18. Plus 4 would be 22. 9. Oh, that's a really good guess. I have 0 left over. No decimal point, which in this case makes sense because we're looking at how many members are in the club and you have to have a whole number of members. So there would be 9 members in the math club.